Hello, everyone. Welcome in today. Today, we're going through our top 10 edge rushers in the 2025 NFL draft. Let's go ahead and get right in. At number 10, we're going to have Braden Swinson, the edge out of LSU. He is 6'4", 255 pounds. I have him rated as going in round 2 solidly. He's got 33 and 3/8 inch arms, 9 and 7/8 hands. He didn't really test at the combine. He did the 3-cone and 20-yard shuttle. His 3-cone was 7.13 and the shuttle was 4.33. My blurb on him, as a pass rusher, he really liked to use the Euro step. It's a fake step either inside or out to kind of fake out the O-line and to set up the blocker for him to hopefully catch them off balance, to swipe with his hands or get into a bull rush. I don't think that he has a plan right now other than the Euro step, but he does try moves. I've seen speed to power, hand swipe, arm extension, bull rush. But the issue I notice is that when he does win the edge, he will struggle to bend and flatten at the top to get the sack, causing him to end up with just getting a pressure at times, but not getting the sack because he ends up running by the quarterback. As a run defender, I do like what I see, especially when he is a read man on RPOs and options, because he'll stay square and patient, and he generally makes the right read and then makes the tackle. I mean, that's a really effective trait, especially with all the RPOs in college. You don't see it in read options in college. You don't see it as much in the NFL, but it's still a good trait to have. It just shows that he's confident and trusts his eyes to me, and that's something that's really important as a run defender. I do think when taking on pullers, though, he wants to use his shoulder instead of his hands and length, and he'll dip his head, causing him to lose sight of the ball carrier and allowing him to lose the edge. At the tackle point, I did notice that he will also dip his head, which can lead to missed tackles or even a penalty in the NFL. I really like Braden Swinson, man. I think he has a floor that's pretty high because he's a good run defender, and his profiles well to the NFL. Like power players who push the pocket, that can last in the NFL. So I think he has like good staying power as long as he stays healthy. But I really like Braden Swinson. The edge class, people were talking about how good it is, and I'll tell you what, I think it's possibly the best edge class I've ever done. Granted, this is the first time I've ever really uploaded it to YouTube with rankings and all that. But I've been doing rankings and watching players for 7, 8, 9, 10 years now. I mean, it's been longer than that because I did it when I was in high school. And let's just say that was a while ago. But this is the first time I've ever really been organized. This class is really good, man. Like, there are some players that didn't make the top 10 that in a normal class they easily would have, or they could even been pushed into the first round just because they're traitsy type guys, and those guys can go early. Let's go ahead and move on to number 9 on our list. It's going to be Nick Scorton, the edge out of Texas A&M. He's a top 50 guy to me. Now, if you're a top 50 guy, I could see you going in like the last few picks of the first round or early in the second round. It's basically how I look at it. He's 6'3", 257 pounds. He's only 20 years old, which is something I really did like about Nick Scorton. He didn't test at the combine, which I didn't understand why. He dropped a bunch of weight. He played real heavy at Texas A&M, and he got all the way down to 257, and then he didn't test. So I didn't really understand that. That's closer to the weight he played at when he was at Purdue, which is when he was really effective, and I loved his tape. Hopefully that brings back some of the explosiveness that wasn't really there in his game this past season. Either way, he had 33-inch arms, 10-inch hands. My blurb on his is I'm happy to see that he shed the weight that he added when he transferred to Texas A&M. I personally feel like it impacted his play in a huge way. I think that he has a deep bag of pass rushing moves that will help him overcome any of his limitations and allows him to create the upper hand against blockers because they never know what to expect. I do see some power in his body that will translate and allow him to be a good run defender in the NFL. The biggest question is losing all that weight. Like, what will that do to his run D? I think it was pretty good at Purdue, so I think he'll be all right. But obviously, losing that weight, he's probably going to lose a little bit of strength, lose a little bit of that anchor that I did like in his game. Either way, though, I think as a pass rusher, the big thing is if he would have tested at the combine, tested off the charts, he probably could have moved up my rankings a little bit just because I really like Nick Scorton watching him, especially when he was at Purdue. That's the biggest problem is I still have Purdue Nick Scorton in my mind, and I want to rate him higher. Let's go ahead and move on to number 8 on my list, and it's a guy that I see going a lot earlier than what I have him. It's Donovan Ezaraku, the edge out of Boston College. To me, he's also a top 50 guy, bottom of the first round, early in the second round. He's 6'2 and a half, 248 pounds. He has vines for arms at 34 inches. He has 9.25-inch hands. Don't really matter that much. A 35.5-inch vertical is good. 9'11 broad jump's good. 6'9", 3-cone's awesome. And a 4.19 20-yard shuttle's also great. The big thing is that kind of worries me about him is his profile. He's shorter. And that's good. It gives him leverage. But at the same time, there's just not a ton of people that are shorter with the long arms. The long arms should help him, which is why I'm not lower on him. I guess I know a lot of people are really, really high on him. I just don't know that I can quite get there. And listen, I'm not hating because he came from Boston College. Like, I grew up in Massachusetts as a young kid, and all my favorite teams are from Massachusetts. I really wanted to put him high on this list, but I don't think I can get there. Either way, let's read the blurb on him. As soon as you turn on the tape, you notice his athleticism athleticism and his bend. He does a really good job bending the edge and flattening to the quarterback. I do think that he doesn't utilize the secondary pass rush move much, so he will need to work on that because when his first move doesn't work out, he tends to get shut down and eliminated from the play. I think he is a solid run defender and he will utilize his arm length to clear his body, to shed and make a play, but at times, especially versus pullers, he just throws his shoulder into them and hope he knocks them into the runner. That will lead to losing the edge and giving up an open running lane. At other times, stronger players will also just move him out of the gap and completely eliminate him. Like I said, Ezaraku is a really good player, man. I personally wouldn't mind taking him at like pick 30, pick 32, pick 27 to some of these like the Lions and the Ravens. If he's the best edge available, I'd take him. I just personally kind of hope my Patriots can get him at the top of round 2 if for some reason we can't get Abdul Carter, which is honestly more likely than not. I just don't see the best player getting the number 4 in this class. Well, he's not my best player, but he's most people's top player in this class getting the number 4. I don't think that that's going to happen. So if they go a different direction in the first round, I'd love them to be able to get Ezaraku at the top of the second. It'd be fantastic. I'm not sure it's going to happen though, if I'm being honest with you. He's a really good player, man. Let's go ahead and move on to my number 7 guy on the list. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is a guy I'm going to put a lot lower on the list than most people. And that's Mykel Williams, the edge out of Georgia. He has the length you're looking for at 6'5", 260 pounds. He's a top 50 guy to me. He has 34 and 3/8 inch arms, which are incredibly long. 10 and a quarter inch hands, huge. He's going to be one of them guys that I gave a much lower grade to based on his tape. And I know he had an ankle injury, but I have to be lower on him, man. Like, I don't trust what I see. I see an excellent run defender, but in my opinion, a guy like JT Tuimoloau, who I really liked his run defense, I didn't put him up here because I don't think that Mykel Williams is that much more athletic than a guy like JT Tuimoloau. I just don't see the athleticism that people think Mykel Williams has. His 40 kind of showed that he didn't have it, and I know he's going to test again prior to the draft. I just have a feeling that, honestly, he's not going to be what people think he is athleticism-wise. He has a really high floor as a run defender, and I want to say that before I read the blurb. But either way, let's go ahead and read it. I gave him the boom bust label, by the way, which means his grade's much lower than this, but I boosted him up, so that way he was more in the range because I realized there's a lot of potential there with the length. Let's go ahead and read it though. It says, I'll start off by saying I know that he played last season on a bum ankle. Having said that, I still see him as a very raw prospect who needs time to develop as a pass rusher. He displays good power in his pass rush, but I still think he could add a bit more, and he has fantastic length, but I don't see the top tier athleticism that people talk about to be an elite pass rusher in the NFL. Now, as a run defender, I do see him as a fantastic player who can be disruptive right away, but overall, I think he needs more time to just develop a bit more. And that's why I'm going to be lower on him. I don't think he's as ready as people want him to be. And a lot of that's on Georgia. They play them out of position. You know, he played 4-eye when he should have been playing edge. And that's just what Georgia does. They did it with Trayvon Walker. But the big thing for me and Mykel Williams is he doesn't have the athleticism of Trayvon Walker. So I can't get there with him. You know, to me, he's just more of that lower guy, and there's just nothing I can do about it because I got to trust my eyes and realize that I gave him a big boost because he's a boom bust guy, but I don't see the traits to make him a top 10 pick like people are talking about. I just can't get there with him. Let's move on to number 6 on my list. And this is a guy that actually would be higher if it wasn't for a red flag. And that's James Pierce Jr. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. He's a round 1 to 2 guy, which means he could go basically from 20 to the end of the first round is kind of the idea there. He has 32 and 3/4 inch arms, which I'm not the biggest fan of. And it's something I really don't love about him. He has 10-inch hands, but he ran a 4.47 40-yard dash. He had a 1.56 10-yard split, 31-inch vertical, also not explosive. Didn't really like that, but a 10.3 broad jump looked good. He's kind of a weird prospect when you look at his testing and his size profile. It's weird. So, as I mentioned, he has a red flag. I'm not going to pretend I know all the inside information. I'm just going to tell you what I heard. It's reported that he has character concerns relating to coachability, and he could be a locker room issue. So, that is what it is. That's not me. That's just what I've been hearing from all the experts. So I do have to notate it and hurt his grade because of that. Either way, let's get into the blurb on him. He has a fantastic first few steps, and he also has fantastic speed. The big thing with him for me is the lack of bend at the top of the rush. I think far too often he can't flatten and get to the quarterback, and he ends up running by the sack. For his size, he has has shown a little bit of speed to power. But for me, I think he really lacks the strength to be effective at the next level with that move. I think that worked against college guys, not going to work against NFL guys. With the build of his body, I also question whether he'll be able to add the strength he needs to his frame, because like he's a linear guy. Like when you look at a build, you can tell the people who are bulkier, wider in the hips, wider in the shoulders. He's not that. I feel like he's basically maxed out where he's at right now, and that's not a bad thing per se. That's not a horrible build for an outside linebacker. You would like more weight on him. The fact is, I kind of think he is what he is at this point. As a run defender, he will try, but I don't think he'll ever be a plus player. I will give him credit. He improved this past season, so there's hope that maybe you could get a little more out of him. You know, I'm much lower on James Pierce than a lot of people. It has to do with the red flags. It has to do with the fact that I don't think he's as bendy as people want him to be. Like, you can find times where he bends the corner, but there's a lot of times on tape where he's just running by the quarterback and he's not getting that bend at the top, which is why the people that are ahead of him are ahead of him. I think they bend a little bit better. And to me, I just can't get there with James Pierce. I know there's a lot of love for him in the draft community, and it's not that I hate him. I think he's a good player, and I think he'll be a good NFL player. Like I said, he'd be a guy that I would fully expect round one if it wasn't for the red flags. Like, this is a good edge rush class. Being number 6 isn't as disrespectful as you would think it would be. But I'm going to say, moving on to my number 5 guy, this is my guy. This is a guy I'm taking a swing on that I personally really like, and I think he's in the same mold as James Pierce. The only difference is I think he's already better as a pass rusher, and that's Princely Umanmielen, the edge out of Ole Miss. I have a round 1 to 2 area draft range on him. He's 6'4", 255 pounds. He didn't play that light. He was heavier throughout his playing career. I think he dropped weight to run at the combine. He has 33 and 7/8 inch arms, which are great. He has 9 and 5/8 hands. He ran a 4.7 240, not quite as fast as you would like, but a 1.62 10-yard split's fine. It's right outside of that range. You want a 1.60 to be an elite edge rusher. He has a 1.62. That's not bad though. 38-inch vertical, 10.6 broad jump, 7.33 cone 7.333 cone drill. Holy smokes, that's a lot of threes. And then a 20-yard shuttle of 4.66. Princely's a guy that would be higher on my list as well, but he has a red flag, so I did ding him for that. I personally I really like Princely Umanmielen. And I think before I read his blurb, I think he is going to walk into the NFL, and I think he's going to be a fantastic DPR, which is what I think James Pierce is going to be. I just think Umanmielen might be better. And I know he's not a great run defender, and you'll hear that in my blurb. But I also think that he gets a little bit more hate than he deserves when it comes to his run defense. Maybe I'm wrong there, and maybe I'm not seeing something because I'm so caught up in his pass rush, but putting him at 5, I wanted to put him higher. I'm not going to lie to you. But with the red flag, which, look what happened after the Florida game if you need anything on that. I mean, it just kind of shows you what you need to look for with him. But either way, let's read the blurb on him. I know I'm in the minority here, but I really think he may be one of the best just pure pass rushers in this class. He has good bend, and he can flatten at the top of the rush and easily get to the quarterback. I think he also has a good set of pass rushing moves already in his toolbox that he pairs with a good get off to help him win the edge consistently. I do think he needs to get better versus the run, but to me, he showed more aggression than he has ever been given credit for. I do think that he needs to add some more strength to his game to help him versus the run and even to diversify his pass rush sets a little bit, because he is kind of a finesse guy, I would say. But overall, he is just a very good pass rusher that you can count on early on in his career as a DPR. And I know it seems kind of high to put a round 1 grade on a DPR guy, but the fact is, at the end of round 1, I think there's more in him. I do think he shows some aggression versus the run. I just think he's not great. I'm not going to lie and say he is, but I think there's hope that maybe you can get more out of him. And I like his frame a lot better. I think he can add the strength you need. So I'm taking a swing on Umanmielen, putting him at number 5, but I really like him, man. And I honestly wanted him ahead of the next guys on my list, but that red flag alert did have to drop him down, and that's what ultimately made his grade lower than theirs. Otherwise, no lie, he'd have been number 3 on my list. And I mean, James Pierce would have followed him at 4. So that's just kind of how it works out between different reasons. You'll see as we go on, then I can kind of explain it all at the end. I'm a big fan of Princely Umanmielen, and I'm taking a shot here putting him high. I know I'm higher than everybody else on him, and that's okay. This is kind of my guy I'm putting my stamp on. I am a Gators fan, so it is kind of shocking that I would make him my guy, but I've watched a lot of his tape, man. I've watched so many different Gator games on TV, and then I watch film on them just to see what they're doing. If I can. I mean, they're my team, so I want to always keep an eye on their guys and keep an eye on them. And I'm a big fan of what he is as a pass rusher. And maybe that's a little bit of it. I will admit I was mad when he left the Gators, so I was kind of hoping I would be in the same area as everybody else on him, but I'm just not. Let's move on, though, to number 4 on our list, and it's Jalen Walker. and I'm classifying him as an edge out of Georgia. He's a round 1 to 2 guy to me. He's somebody that just barely beat out Umami Ellen with his final grade. 6'1", 243. He has 32-inch arms, 10.25-inch hands. I'm just gonna be honest with you when it comes to Jalen Walker. I'm not sure what to do with him. He got a big boost because of a boom bust rating, so he's a guy that I could see with his elite athleticism that he hasn't shown yet, but I know it's in there, how he can become a top tier player. But I also see with his frame and his instincts seeming to be lacking, how he's completely washed out of the league in a few years. My grade on him puts him much lower on this list, but I gave him the boom bust label to help bring him up, much like his teammate Michael Williams. And I have a lot of questions about him. And I think he's a guy that he's like a jack of all trades, master of nothing other than blitzing from the linebacker position and spying from the linebacker position. But when you ask him to be a linebacker, he's simply not good, in my opinion. He has to play on the edge. I don't think he has any instincts as a linebacker. I think you can move him there to blitz him, and that's about it. He could maybe develop him there, which is why I moved him down to edge and called him an edge rusher. I don't know. He's going to be an outlier at the position if he succeeds. I'm really low on him compared to most. To me, easily he falls behind Princely and James Pierce, and he's much closer to Michael. And I mean, his grade even would put him below Azaraku without the boom bust to me, because I see that he has potential in there with his elite athleticism, but he gets a lot of credit for his sacks against Texas. I mean, watch them games. He didn't do anything to get most of them. They were 2 spy sacks, and then the third one was he rushed upfield, the quarterback stepped up and he shed and made the sack, which isn't a bad play, but it wasn't an elite bend. It wasn't showing anything elite. He didn't win the rep. Calvin Banks was square on. I want to say Quinn, I think it was, held the ball too long, stepped up towards him, and he just shed and made the sack, which is exactly what you want, but it doesn't show me he's an elite edge rusher. So I don't know. I struggle with him, and I have him much lower than most people. But either way, let's read my blurb on him. When watching his tape, the athleticism jumps right out to you. The big issue with me is that I think he is a raw prospect with upside as an edge rusher, but the issue is he lacks the size you would like him to have as an edge rusher. I view him as a tweener who will have to have a defined role that not every DC will be able to utilize. I think you end up playing him on both edge and linebacker, where he is very raw, but in games that require a spy, he is the perfect player for that role because you can spy him and blitz him. I don't view him as a linebacker just because he doesn't appear to be comfortable and he lacks the natural instincts for the position. As an edge rusher, he has the explosiveness that you covet for the position, along with the bend, the flatten to get to the quarterback. I think he is a bit raw still due to the lack of experience on the edge and will need to work on his pass rush plan and moves as a whole. That's my blurb on him. He's number 4, but he's somebody that I'm very unsure about having at number 4. This class has a lot of upside, but he's one of the riskier ones to me. And we're going to pair that up with number 3, and that's Shamar Stewart. He's another boom bust guy that would be lower on my list. I do think he has a higher floor than Jalen Walker, because even though he doesn't get sacks, he does get pressures, which means he could be a good number 2 edge rusher, where at least he's out there getting pressure on the quarterback. And I could see him having a career if it doesn't work out right away. Walker, I really worry about washing out of the league just because he's such a unique player. Either way, Stewart's 6'5", 267 pounds. He has 34 and an 1/8 inch arms, 9 and 5/8 hands, 4.59 in the 40, a 1.58 10-yard split, a 40-inch vertical, a 10-foot 11-inch broad jump. This is your athletic freak. This is what people wanted Michael Williams to be. He's the Jalen Walker clone to me. Shamar Stewart is. If Trent Baalke was picking at number 1 overall, he'd take Shamar Stewart there. Doesn't have the production in college, but he has the length you covet. He has everything else you covet. And to me, I do have a round 1 grade on Shamar Stewart with a boom bust label as well, which raised his grade up. However, I had him rated ahead of Walker and Williams, so that's how he ended up at top of that tier, which tells you Princely would be 3, James Pierce would be 4, Stewart would be 5, or Azaraku would be 5, sorry, and then Stewart, and then Scorton, and then it would be Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, and then Braden Swinson if it wasn't for the boom bust ratings on here. But with the ratings, that's what it adjusts, because you just have to. Some of these guys, you look at them and you're like, they have more potential in them, and that's Shamar Stewart. That's how he ends up at number 3 on my list. Let's go ahead and read about it. Everyone talks about the lack of sack output by him. I personally like that he does a good job getting pressure on the quarterback, but I do wonder why he can't finish the sack, and at the end of the day, that is a skill. Once again, he is a player that comes into the NFL as a raw prospect who needs a ton of work. The reason I'm higher on him is simply that I see the high-end athlete that he is, and I see a better floor as a run defender. As a pass rusher, I do see a bull rush that can be very effective. The problem is he struggles with hand placement, which can limit his effectiveness, and right now, I don't see a counter move in his game, And I think he relies on that bull rush far too much. I think as a run defender, he runs into the same issues with hand placement getting too wide. And right now, that will limit his effectiveness a little bit at times. But I think he actually is pretty good at verse to run. And the thing with Shamar Stewart is he has an effective bull rush. He just hasn't been able to shed and actually make the final play. Like, he'll cause the quarterback to step up, get a pressure, but he can't finish. And he needs to get that rip. He needs to get the swim, whatever at the end to be able to pair with the bull rush to get himself free and make the sack. Now, you do have to question if he's going to be the same strength at 267 pounds as what he was at Texas A&M when I think he was playing at 285. A&M really had their ends bulk up, and it must be for their scheme, but I just don't think it fit him the best, to be fully honest with you. And that could very well be why Stewart wasn't able to finish. Like, he just wasn't comfortable with how heavy they were asking him to play. And I mean, people don't realize how much it matters, the comfort level of like how you feel in your body when you're out there playing. The shedding of the weight could easily make him a little bit better of a finisher because he might feel like a better athlete. And it might allow for him to be a little twitchier and to use that athleticism that he has to be able to get wins like that instead of relying solely on technique. Because let's face it, he's an awesome athlete. And I think Shamar Stewart has a lot of upside. Like I said, he's a round one guy to me. We're going to move on though. But before number 2, I want to ask you, if you're still sticking around, consider smashing that subscribe button for me. If you're still here, guys, like, I would truly appreciate it. I don't ask for a lot. It'd be really helpful if you would. Either way, let's move on. It's number 2 on our list. Everybody knows who it is at this point. It's Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall. He's 6'3", 251 pounds. He has 32-inch arms, which is a question for him, and 8.5-inch hands, and he did 28 bench press reps. He's a round 1 guy and not a top 10 guy to me, simply because he has a huge red flag. And he talked about it, so I feel comfortable talking about this one. But he was accused of sexual assault during high school, and when he went to Virginia, he had a no-nonsense clause, basically. And when he was accused again at Virginia, they kicked him out of school, and he went to Marshall. Now, he's never been charged or convicted of these crimes. There was a person who came out on Twitter, I think it was, and said like, oh, there's more people with more stories like this from him. So there's some risk there of character because that simply can't be allowed. We all know that you can't act like that to women and to people and have a job like this. Now he hasn't been charged, so he gets the benefit of the doubt. However, I still don't think you take that inside the top 10. That's too big of a risk for me. If he didn't have these red flags, he would be a top 10 player for me. But with him, I can't put him that high. So let's go ahead and read the blurb on him. He's a very bendy and fluid athlete who has very good get off. I think he is already a very good pass rusher with a deep bag of moves, and he was able to use counter moves throughout games I watched as well. That shows that he has a pass rush plan right now, and he knows what to do to get to the quarterback, and it allows him to walk into the NFL and be an effective player right away. I will say he is a very high effort player, and that shows up for both the pass and the run. However, when stronger players can get a hold of him, they will be able to wash him out of the play and completely eliminate him. As a run defender, I would say he is good overall due to his high motor, but he still needs to get stronger to be able to set the edge more and be more effective. And that length is a bit of an issue for him, I think, setting edges as a run defender because, longer tackles can get a hold of it and they can get a hold of him and end up controlling that rep. So I really like Mike Green as a football player. He is awesome. Like I said, the red flags, they are what they are. You have to drop them because of that, He has some questions also on length, like 32-inch arms, not ideal. That's something you have to watch. Like, it's not an end-all be-all, like, he can't play the edge. It's like with Will Campbell. I think you overblow it a little bit during this process, but it matters, and it is something you have to look at, and it has to go into the evaluation. Let's go ahead, though, and move on to number 1 on our list. But before we do that, if you're at number 1, hit that like button. I'd appreciate it. It helps the video get out so more people can see it. Number 1 on our list, Abdul Carter, the edge out of Penn State. He's a top 5 guy to me all day. He's 21 years old, 6'3", 250 pounds. He didn't test at the combine. He didn't even have his arms measured, probably because of that shoulder injury. But he does have a red flag to me with the shoulder injury, and he does also have the foot fracture they found at the combine. Now, he doesn't need surgery, which is very important and very good, but you do have to wonder, that's some injuries adding up. And the fact is, that's a thing. Rick Spielman was on With the First Pick podcast. And one of the things he always said is injured players don't usually get healthier in the NFL. So to me, that's why I put a red flag and didn't give him the boost that I normally would have, which would have put him over Travis Hunter for number 1, just because he is such a freaky athlete. But when you have that, and like that sticks in my mind when a former NFL GM who works in a front office says like, hey, college guys who deal with injuries don't get better in the NFL. You got to remember that. So that's just something to think of with Abdul Carter. If it goes sideways, it's not going to be off of ability. It will be because of injuries. He is awesome otherwise. He is a super athletic and bendy edge rusher. He seems to have A+ get off and burst. He bends and flattens around the edge better than anyone else in this class. He has all the traits to become an elite edge rusher in the NFL, and he already has a plethora of moves in his toolbox. I do think that he tries hard versus the run and he plays with great effort, but he could certainly add some more bulk and strength to his frame in order to better equip himself to handle run defense. Overall, though, if you're drafting him, you expect him to be among the top 5 edge rushers in the NFL with average to above average run defensive capabilities. That's my blurb on it, Abdul Carter, and I'll just say it, man. I'm a big fan of Abdul Carter. I think he's an awesome player. It's his first year on the edge this year, but you see that explosiveness in his game. Like, if you want to talk about a Micah Parsons, it is a lot of Abdul Carter, and it's not the number, it's not the helmet, it's the fact that Penn State did the same exact thing, and they're very similar in builds. Like, they played him at off ball, and then their final season, they went to edge and they took off, and they could see the dominant traits in them. And, I don't think the NFL is going to make that mistake twice in letting a guy like that drop. Abdul Carter should easily go in the top 5 of this class. I don't see him getting past number 4 with the New England Patriots. I want him to get there as a Patriots fan. Like, I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm a Patriots fan through and through. Dude, if he gets there and we pass on him or trade, I will be furious. Like, there is no reason to pass on a guy like this. Heck, I understand why at number 1 the Titans won't probably take him, because I do think Cam Ward's a good enough quarterback prospect and it makes a ton of sense for him, and they really do need a quarterback on that team. At number 2, Cleveland, honestly, I think everything's setting up for them to go Shedeur, and that's why the Giants acted how they acted. So that's just a personal opinion. I'm going to have another mock draft coming out probably next week, but I really, truly feel like they're telling us Cleveland is taking Shedeur, Cam's going at 1. And that tells me that we have a 50-50 shot of getting Abdul Carter at number 4. And I think with the Giants, it makes more sense to take Travis Hunter than it does Abdul Carter. But I understand if they take Carter just because he is such an elite athlete. And like I said, without that little red flag with the injury history, he would be number 1 in this class for me. But in this class, he's number 2 to Travis Hunter. So there's some hope that he'll get to us. But either way, that's it for our top 10 edge rushers. Let's talk about a few other guys that didn't end up making the list that I really liked. I'm a little higher on JT Tuimoloau than a lot of people. I think he's a 2nd-round pick. I think his run defense is just such a high floor for him that even though he'll probably be a number 2 edge rusher, like, I think with his power profile, he'll be able to crush the pocket, and there's going to be a role for him, even if he ends up maybe trying to slide inside to create pressure on 3rd downs. I think there's a role for him to be an all 3-down player in the NFL. I liked Oluwafemi Oladejo out of UCLA. I will admit, both him and Josiah Stewart, I have a few more tapes to watch on. I've watched some and their grades are lower, so I felt comfortable coming out without them being in my top 10 because they would likely be 11, 12, 13 area on this list. But I have not finished their full eval. I still need one more tape of each to be able to write my final report and make everything final. But it would take a phenomenal, like, something seriously, which would require 2 tapes to be able to find and confirm to move them ahead of Braden Swinson right now. Josiah Stewart, I mentioned. Jordan Birch, I really like. And Jared Ivey is good. I watched Ashton Gelati, who I think is just like a pocket pusher, good run defender, but not quite as high as JT Tuimoloau. Even though his athleticism, I heard at his pro day, he ran like a 4.5 something. Like, I heard he was super fast, and I did not see that when watching him on film. And I got to try to find that and get it confirmed, because I'll tell you what, that'll move him up for me. You got Antoine Powell-Ryland. I think he's just like a future DPR type. Kyle Kennard, pretty powerful player. You got Jack Sawyer, of course. He has the height and weight that you'd like in an NFL edge rusher. He doesn't have the length. And, he's just, I was really high on him until I really dug into his tape and was less impressed than what I thought it would be. Like, I talked about him at one point in time going at pick 19, and I'll admit that was before I did my full eval. That's when you're watching the TV copies, and like, you get the impression on TV that he's this dominant player, and then when you watch on film, you're like, he's not. There's just time that he's just not that effective. Doesn't mean I hate him, but, he just wasn't good enough to make my top 10. And then, of course, Landon Jackson. He's the guy that I truly think would go at the end of the first round if this class wasn't so deep. Like, he has the traits you're looking for. He tries things, but he doesn't know what he's doing out there. So to me, he's a traitsy guy that if he was in last year's class, it's probably at the end of round 1 that a team takes a flyer on because he has a high upside with the athleticism. And I mean, that athleticism was really good at the combine from Landon Jackson. So there's a chance that I could see a team taking a swing higher on him than what I have him just because of that athleticism. But to me, in this class, you don't need to do that as much. There's enough of them guys already here where he's just going to be a tier lower to me. I really like Landon Jackson. He's a round 2 to 3 guy. But like I said, in last year's class or in most classes, I wouldn't be shocked if he went at the end of round 1. He's a trade C guy. And if you want to get him at the end of round 2, beginning of round 3, he has a high ceiling as a pass rusher. But that's it for this video today. If you guys made it this far, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'd appreciate it. Either way, I hope you have a great day. Our next ranking will likely be a top 5, if I had to guess, for linebackers or safeties. And then we got corners coming out soon. So keep sticking around. We're going to get through all these before the NFL draft. I want to thank you for watching. Have a great day. I'll catch you in the next one. I'm out.